The new Liberal government has promised to bring 25,000 Syrian refugees to our much safer shores by the end of next month. They've since promised to double that by the end of the year. Joining us now for more on those settlement efforts, here's John McCallum. He's the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship and the MP for Markham Thornhill. And we, first of all, welcome you here. You're our first guest on our newfangled set, so thank you for doing that.
It's a great pleasure to be your first guest. It's a very beautiful new set you have.
Well, you're sort of sitting on top of the biggest story in the country for the last many months, so we thought you'd be a good choice to get in here for this, and Happy New Year to you as well. You recently were over there, checking out the refugee claim process. What'd you learn that you didn't already know by going over?
Well, a few things. It certainly impressed me that we were doing the right thing to bring all these refugees over, because many were desperate to leave. Many were living in really bad conditions, and so that reinforced the view. Now, it's true not every one of them wants to leave. Some of them want to return to their country and are waiting, but many, many, many do. Also, we got to speak to the government officials, including the King of Jordan, who doesn't usually meet mere ministers, but we were honored to meet him. And Jordan is really pulling out all the stops to help us. We have a fantastic processing center, which they provided us. A lot of the people come on Royal Jordanian Airlines, no problem with exit permits. And Lebanon, similarly, I went the second time, and they're helping as well. But also to see all of our people there. We have 500 people on the ground working in these processing centers, and talk about real change. This is nothing that's ever been done before, to get 25,000 people over here in a matter of 3 months.
Okay, but in spite of all of that, you did not hit the targets that you set out during the campaign. You're disappointed about
that? Moderately disappointed, but we always said we wanted to do it fast, but we always said more important is to do it right. So we had to be absolutely sure on the security checks and the health checks. And this machine overseas, it's like a wave. It starts slowly and then builds up. And once it's built up, we can deliver 3 flights a day, 4 flights a day, and they can bring in refugees in huge numbers. But in the early times, there are teething problems as people learn how to work together on something they've never done before. So I'm full of praise for all of our public servants. Huge work over there.
I wonder if you have any qualms at all about the fact that these refugees, quite understandably, are the focus of your attention right now. But I have heard, for example, from others who have said, you know, we're trying to get some Iraqi Christians out of Iraq who are just as persecuted as these folks, and they've been told to sit tight because the Syrians are now the priority. You feel bad about others who are having to wait longer because of this?
Well, I have asked questions about that, and I was assured by my department that none of the others are adversely affected. They're not.
Well, I'm hearing different.
Okay, I'm told that the resources diverted to help the Syrians were not diverted from other refugees. So the other refugees are probably going slower than we would like, but they're not going slower as a consequence of Syria. That's what I've been told. And I don't really apologize for putting the focus on Syria, because this is the worst refugee crisis the world has seen in decades. And Canada can't be a home to everybody, and there's nothing wrong with focusing on the worst crisis, letting the other needy cases proceed as well, but putting the main emphasis on the place where the refugee situation is very, very dire.
You did mention a moment ago that not everybody wants to come here. And in fact, I guess it was reported only 6.3% of refugees contacted said they wanted to come to Canada by February. Why do you think that number is so low?
Well, I think that number has since gone way up. I think there were issues about contacting people and whether people had their cell phones working to receive messages and things of that kind. So I think a large number. We're taking, there are way, way more that we could take that we are unable to take. But there are still some who don't want to come because they yearn to go back to their own country, and they're willing to wait, often in dire circumstances, with that hope that still burns in some. But many, many others have been there for a long time. They see the situation in Syria not getting any better, but if anything, getting worse. And so they're really excited and pleased and happy to come here. And you can see that, as I have, when you see the faces at the airports and in the media. And so I think there's a large number of very happy Syrians.
There's no question
here.
about that. No question about that. However, having said that, these are not the Syrians, for example, whom we also would have seen earlier on television hopping into boats and taking their lives in their hands to try to escape the appalling circumstances in which they lived. What would you say to those people who might argue that the ones that are chosen by the United Nations High Commission on Refugees are actually not the ones who need to get out of there the most?
Well, I would disagree with that because the United Nations has its criterion of who is vulnerable, and everyone on that list is considered by the United Nations to be vulnerable. So we choose from that list, and we're after vulnerable people, irrespective of religion and other factors. And so some of them will be Christians, some of them will be Muslims, but they are all vulnerable according to the United Nations definition. And so
some more than others, though.
But the government-assisted refugees tend to be less educated, lower income, perhaps more needy, perhaps more vulnerable. Some of the privately sponsored refugees, they're still vulnerable, but perhaps less so. Perhaps they're better healed than many of the government. And the commitment we made is 25,000 government-assisted refugees, but there were also going to be at least 10,000 privately sponsored.
Sure. Let me follow up on this angle here. What was your job before you got into politics? I know, but humor me here for a second.
Okay. I was always in economics and finance.
That's the point. That's the point I'm trying to make. So you know money. You're an economist, and this is where I want to ask a few questions about money now. How much does it cost to bring a government-sponsored family over here from over there?
Well, it costs about almost 700 million to bring 50,000.
So my question then is, if we're prepared to spend $700 million...
I mean 25,000, sorry.
Yeah, $700 million for 25,000. If we're prepared to spend $700 million to improve the lives of those 25,000 families, is it better spent bringing them over here, or is it better spent trying to make sure their lives are saner over there? What do you think?
Both. I think
you can't do both.
Well, we are obviously deciding to bring them over, but we're also giving aid to the humanitarian cause of the United Nations to help the people over there generally. We also have a role in the fight against ISIS. That's a different and possibly controversial topic, but we are certainly remain engaged in that war effort. But my job is to bring over the refugees, and having been there twice, having seen them, having seen their reaction when they arrive here, having seen the huge outpouring of support by Canadians from big businesses like CN, which gives $5 million to little kids who have welcoming signs, and the Muslim community, the Sikh community in the middle who have provided huge support.
No, I get that
this
you're
is
the minister.
something
I get
that
you're
Canadians want. It's something that defines us, and it doesn't mean that we cannot also provide some assistance over there. But I think what we are doing is the right thing to do.
I get you. I know you're not the Minister for International Development. You're not the Minister of Defense. They may have a view on this as well. But as people look at this, and as you've had a chance to look at it yourself, having been there, have you come to a conclusion on where we get the best bang for our buck in terms of making their lives better?
Well, I think we can most directly make the lives of 25,000 or more way, way better by bringing them here. That you can see with your own eyes. I think indirectly, we can make their lives better by contributing money to the United Nations. We contributed $100 million, and by other kinds of development assistance, and also militarily through the war against ISIS.
Okay, let me try this. Clearly, it's been good for Canada's image to be seen as an open and generous country for these refugees. No argument there. Tell us how, and we see how it's better for the refugees to come here. How's it better for Canadians to have them come here?
Okay, I think it certainly put Canada on the map, especially the juxtaposition of Donald Trump in the United States versus Justin Trudeau meeting the first refugees, and that photo went around the world. I should hasten to add the Obama administration supports us, but certainly that went around the world and has improved Canada's image. But way more importantly, I think for Canadians, the first stage is a humanitarian act, a big humanitarian act of generosity, which helps to show us and the world who Canadians are. But in the medium term and in the not so long term, these individuals will get jobs, and they will become productive working members of Canada.
Are you sure about that? Because that's the fear, obviously, is that they won't get jobs, they'll be disenfranchised, they will ultimately come to feel embittered about the fact that they may have been sold a bill of goods, and it'll not work out the way people want.
I'm not saying 100% will work out, but if you go by our past experience, the Vietnamese boat people, the people from Uganda, the Hungarian Revolution refugees, they have done well in this country. And, you know, our two of our former governors general, the two most recent, were both refugees themselves. We have a cabinet minister who was a refugee. Refugees as a whole have done well. And, you know, one of the indicators is that two of the provinces who were the most enthusiastic to receive refugees were New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And those are places with a rapidly aging population. So they're desperate for workers, whether refugees or not. And so I think in the medium term, Canada will benefit because these individuals, as has been the case with past waves of refugees, on the whole, will become strong citizens, strong members of the workforce, and they will benefit us in the medium term, even though we are indulging in a big humanitarian gesture in the short run.
Tell us this, the data from your own ministry says that privately sponsored refugees, as opposed to government-sponsored refugees, are much more likely to get jobs sooner and do better sooner. And apparently it's only until you're 9 years out that the experiences start to even out. Why would that be?
Well, I think that is because they have a home to go to. A lot of them have families here or sponsors. So they're not all by themselves in a new country. They're with a sponsor, whether it's a family or another group, and those people will help them to get a quick liftoff.
And the settlement services that the government provides can't compete with that?
Apparently that's what the data suggests, not as quickly, because having your own family here is better, it seems, than what the services can provide. But that said, we are working extremely well to provide welcoming places for the refugees to stay, to give them good training in language, to address their health issues and so on. So I am convinced that the great bulk of them will soon become productive, contributing Canadians.
I don't know you that well, so I'm going to go on a bit of a fishing expedition here, and I hope you don't mind.
No.
I normally don't ask guests about their personal lives, but I think your personal life may very well inform the job that you now have. So I am going to ask you about this. Where's your wife from originally?
Malaysia.
Was she a refugee when she came to Canada?
No, this might be embarrassing, but it was over 30 years ago. She was one of my students when I was a professor at Simon Fraser. So we got married over 30 years ago. And so she's never been a refugee, but because of her background, I think we tend to be quite international looking. But I can tell you that this is the last job I ever thought I would have, because I've always been sort of economics, finance, and this really more speaks to the heart. It's more about what Canada is. And so it's something new to me, but it is the job of a lifetime to be able to be leading this charge to bring 25,000 people from desperate straits over to our warm, welcoming country. So it's a labor of love and quite a long way away from the dollars and cents.
I hope you don't mind my going on that fishing expedition.
No.
But I thought, given that your wife is from away,
Yes.
you would know something about what it's like to have people come from halfway around the world and try to get them to embrace the whole Canadian dream. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and my wife has certainly done that, and her family has come over, and my riding is another factor. It's about 1/3 Chinese, 1/3 South Asian. So my whole political life is in a hugely multicultural part of the country. Markham is, according to Stats Canada, is Canada's most diverse city. So I live and breathe diversity, not only at home with my wife, but also in my riding with all of my constituents. So it does come naturally for me to promote a diverse and multicultural society. And that is one area where I think Canada leads the world. I use that term very sparingly. Some people say Canada leads the world in everything. I never say that because it's not true. But I think in terms of our ability to create a welcoming, diverse community, we do lead the world, and we do. And one proof of that is that when German ministers came to Canada, they requested a meeting with the mayor of Markham to ask him how we do this so well. So I think that's something we can be proud of, and I think that's another good reason why we bring in refugees to add to the diversity of our country.
Minister, that's our time. It's good of you to join us here at TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
Pleasure to christen your new space. Thank you very much.
We're delighted you did. John McCallum, the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship in the Liberal Government of Canada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.